high possibility restaurants to make as long as she's not.
Before we begin the tour, we're gonna go to this place where you can see essentially how the monastic community started here and how it evolved. So you have this hut that there was a hermit monk who lived there, the last hermit monk that was ever in this area. You're gonna see how we started out with these monks who lived kind of scattered and isolated in different caves, which are natural, as you'll see, on the surface of the rocks, and how we ended up with those monks who live here today in those huge monasteries. To our first stop, I thought we could already talk a bit about how the rocks are forming. So here we are in the Valley of Thessalia. This is the biggest, the flattest valley that we have in the country. Most of what you saw as you were coming here in the train, it used to be underwater. About 65 million years ago, there was a lake here. There was a very large lake then, which was surrounded by very tall mountains like the mountain range of Pindus, which you'll see to your left in a while. And there were rivers kept getting more and more solid, more and more compact rather, until they started becoming solid. So you could see that the rocks are a bit like natural cement, and they were formed underwater. They roughly look like the caves they were formed inside. Okay, but then about 12 to 15 million years ago, there was most likely a tsunami here. That's the most popular theory, and that's what pushed them up above the water. They're mainly sandstone and limestone, which we'll see. So it's sandstone and then limestone are round on the outside anyway, that kind of holds them together, sort of. And so the rocks, we can tell, we'll see that they came up above the water very quickly, very abruptly, but the water, for it to drain into the Aegean Sea, that took a while. Because, so we think one of the earthquakes that were happening at the time must have broken Mount Olympus in half. And the Romans stopped persecuting them. They were looking for a way essentially to become martyrs. That's how it started. Arrived here in the late 8th, early 9th century because we had these great ascetic conditions and a safe area for them. We'll get to more detail in our first stop. Now here to your right though, you can see our first example of locals using rocks. Something must have been there that kept sediments from gathering. So we have these caves which are deep and dark. It's wet in there as well. It's easy to preserve food. Essentially, that's what it is.
We spent like 4 hours all of us in HB up and downstairs. I can't do this. I'm tired. Go ahead.
get bigger, and eventually they become big enough for someone to try and live in there. That's awesome. I think I know who that is. He was a local ship driver, but no. So, you see then the hut, you see that wooden structure that's built into the rock? This is where the last hermit ever lived. So we said again that the first monks who came here were hermits, and the idea was they wanted to just kind of find a cave. They were supposed to get in there, never come back out again. For them to succeed as hermits, they were supposed to live in a cave like that until their leg muscles had atrophied and they were completely paralyzed. Beautiful ways to live. And they would do that for several reasons. They wanted, of course, to stay away from sin and temptation. They wanted to punish themselves, hoping that this would help them earn heaven, become martyrs maybe. The main thing is they were trying to leave themselves completely into the hands of God. Because that way they would prove that they loved him, they trusted him, they believed in him enough that they knew he was going to keep them alive, even again after they were paralyzed in a hut up there, right? At the same time though, maybe that way he could prove to them, or they could prove to themselves that he was real and he was a loving God. Because if you were paralyzed in a hut up there and you still survived, clearly he was the one providing for you. So he existed and he loved you. And how he would prove all that? He wouldn't make food appear out of thin air or anything of the sort, right? He would just send the locals to provide for them. So in the minds of the hermits, the locals were messengers of God, and yet they were still sinners who gave into temptation that they wanted nothing to do with. So perhaps a bit hypocritical. They wanted to live off of Mainly it's a nice spot to get some pictures of it. And then we can go. So that's St. Nicholas. That is how the second type of monks live. You're going to see the chapel in the second, in the middle too. But it would be just this. It's a two caves with a wooden wall in front of them. We'll get to that later again. But all the early structures were wood. Yeah, she. So we're looking at the monastery that's up there, right? Saint Nicholas. And we are going to go in chronological order. So we're going to look at Saint Nicholas, then the chapel, and then we're going to find the back and Saint Nicholas. And don't touch the space.
The church.
So there's above the monastery, you see the sticks that are nailed into the rock. That was one way they had to climb. There were sticks like that, there was scaffolding, sometimes it was like ice making, so they would make the soil, the limestone with vinegar, nail picks into the sandstone, and either kind of the sandstone, sands of sandstone from back in the night, exciting lakes. And that wooden bead at the top is where they would
It's a beauty, isn't it?
It's from the 6th century, it's new. They were trying to get away from the Turks, that's why they built it on the rocks by then. And now, we're almost at that restaurant. It's a really nice restaurant. There's a grandma that cooks there. It's exactly what a grandma will cook here. Same serving sizes, same amount of oil, if that's a concern. But you're gonna burn it off today. Now, I can help you order. There's no time to order off the menu, but they have things that are prepared. You point to them, they serve that he would intervene and save her husband. And of course, the wife was Muslim. She was desperate though. This is, she really loved her husband, so she decided to pray. And she offered the saint her hijab, which of course was very important to her. Somehow her husband didn't just survive, he fully recovered. So they stayed here while he was getting better, and then she went up there, she left her scarf in there as she had promised the saint. The locals found it, obviously, after they were gone. They assumed it was a miracle. They still now, every year on the day of St. George, it's been hundreds of years. We don't know when it started exactly, but they climb up there, they offer scarves to St. George. There's generally a crowd right under the monastery. People will bring the scarves and give them to local climbers who go up there using no safeties. They just use the one route where they climb like mountain goats. It's like a special thing they have here. So they go up there. We actually have pieces of scarves here too. He gave me one like this one this year. He did because he wants me to get married and get away from here, but that's not going to happen. So I can auction it off if you want. Alright, now we're officially in the archaeological site. By the way, there was a plaque there that told us we're in the part of the rocks that's protected by UNESCO. And the first thing you're going to see to the right in a second is going to be a vineyard, because priorities. Then we said they had to drink the wine. Watered down wine is what they had to drink. And above that, that's an elephant. That's the head of an elephant. See, big rock is the head, small rock is the ear, and there's a cave, round cave, that's the eye. And then you're gonna see and then at the front of the truck, at the front of the truck, you're going to see that there is a big cave that has, that one was created through ice erosion. We could start there. Ice erosion, what happens there is because the rock is porous, water seeps in there, and then as it converts to ice, it expands and it blows up the rock. So you get deep caves like that one, or you get rocks that look like someone sliced them with a knife. And then you're going to see that there are some holes on the sides of the cave because monks would dig those in and they would affix wooden floors into those holes. And the wooden floors, they're gone. There's a bit of wood that's left at the top to the right side. And what they would do then is they would go and atone for sins. They remember how they would go spend a few days in abandoned huts, etc. Well, here it wasn't a few days. Here it was up to 40 days at a time without saying a word to anyone. So the locals thought that this was a prison. You would say that it was a place of punishment because if you were willing to atone for a sin for 40 days, you must have committed a pretty big sin, right? But it was their own choice to come here, so in that sense you couldn't really call it a prison. They weren't being forced to be here. And yet, of course, we still call it the prison of the monks because that's what the locals thought it was. And then you're also going to see in a second, past the turn, past these trees anyway, you're going to have the best view of St. Nicholas that you can get today. So if you want to get your cameras ready now, because we can't stop here. It's a really dumb place to park at, but he's very reckless as a driver. So there you go. She's very zen today. He knows I'm talking about him, but he doesn't know what I'm saying. I'm using fancy words. Okay, you're right. There it is. So that's a great example of what had to start happening here eventually, because you have two short trucks. There would be small semi-organized monasteries on both of them. St. John the Baptist to the left, St. Nicholas to the right. And then they decided to merge them together. And they decided also, so St. Nicholas is still around then. There's two monks in there. It has the worst access out of all of them. It's the second worst access. It also is though where the School of Iconography that's protected by UNESCO was established. The church is really beautiful. The one you're going to see, the first one, is the most western of the churches here too, by the way, because the painter was a Catalan one. Anyway, this is a parking spot for like 5, 6, 7 cars, but 2 of them decided they were going to take it all out because
Sorry. Here I am. I'm so tan, burned from yesterday.
it was easier anyway to build. It's just here, one of the founders had been sick for 10 years. Eventually he became bedridden. They figured he was probably going to die. They wanted to hurry up and finish the church before he did. And they say that he died the very day that they inaugurated the church. He took in the Holy Communion. He said he was ready. He died a few hours later. And there's St. Barbara next to it as well. That one is a monastery that has been... that have to cross, and then you can... I don't know if any of you watched Game of Thrones. Yes. Yeah, see, generally, I'm usually the only one who didn't in the bus. But they tried to film an episode there. The monks, they hate Hollywood, so they wouldn't let them film. But they do like money, so they let them take pictures and use those in the show. So yeah, you can see that, where the way that was in the Game of Thrones, so yes. And I think, perhaps for me at least, the most interesting thing about it is when Athanasius, the founder of Great Meteora, when he got here, I will mention that he was looking for those ascetic conditions and for the safety, right? But what convinced him to stay, he said, was the view. He said, She got here on. No, she didn't. It's here. She's trying to catch a public bus with it. It's fine, don't worry. So anyway, the thing that convinced him to stay was the view, because he said he saw a cloud and the rocks were picking out of nowhere, and he felt like he was trapped between earth and heaven, like floating in the middle, and God's presence was everywhere here. And I think you can see how a Christian monk would see God's presence everywhere here, right? Especially in the Middle Ages. What we think he saw was inverted mist, because it gets really foggy here in the winter, but sometimes there's this thing where the fog, the atmospheric pressure holds it down, and you can only see the peaks of the rocks. It's a beautiful view. We think we saw it where we're headed next. So there won't be any fog there. It's a beautiful monasteries, hundreds of monks in those monasteries, thousands maybe even. And then in the 17th century was when it started going through a very long decline, which coincided with the decline again of the Ottoman Empire. Because they started going through decline earlier, late 15th, early 16th century. It just took a while to affect the monks. Now, they had this thing where most of their income was supposed to come from the religious minorities in their empire. They would enforce these extra taxes on them, and then they would use that money to maintain their state and their army. That was supposed to force them to constantly expand. It was difficult to get enough income, so they had to constantly take over new territories and enforce taxation there. At some point, though, they stopped growing, and they just kind of started taxing the religious minorities to death. And the Christians were considered second-class citizens here, so they had it extra bad, let's say. The consequences, but the taxes were very expensive to begin with. They kept getting more and more expensive. And of course, if you couldn't afford to pay the taxes, the consequences also kept getting worse. So people were being sold into slavery, they were being tortured, they were being killed. And what this meant for the monks is essentially nobody could donate anything to them, because everything the locals had, the church would get. So the monks ran out of money, with no new income coming their way. By the 17th century, they were broke. And that is when the monks came here. The Turks came here and they started ransacking the monasteries, hurting the monks. It wasn't safe for them, but the climate changed as well. We started to go through a mini ice age in Europe. The earth, they say, got colder by 2 degrees. It's just Europe had it extra bad again. So the monks couldn't survive the winter because they couldn't leave the monasteries in the winter. They had to generally spend the entire year gathering food, firewood, etc. And then they had to live off of that. As the winters kept getting longer and harsher, it just got to where they couldn't get their supplies to last, so they had to start fleeing, or they would starve or freeze to death. So here you see 4.
One more of this.
Look at this.
Thank you so much.
It's beautiful.
She's telling me to lean down, she can get the monasteries in the background.
Welcome to Meteora monasteries. This here behind me. Yeah. And another one there. And another one on top there. See. So there are 3 monasteries there. As you can see. Yeah. Look. It's very beautiful. Yeah. Look at that. Ta-da-da-da-da-da. That's a beautiful view. Okay, let's climb up. It's a beautiful view. Look at that. See? Oh.
So nice, huh?
Let me get a picture. We are now here in Meteora. Okay, look at that view. It's beautiful. Let's go over there. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Oops, sorry. Oops, sorry. Alright. See? That one. Oh, you're taking a picture. Let me go out. Let me go out of the way. Everyone is there. Let me go here. There. Look at that view over there. See? It's beautiful. Look at that. Let's climb up here. See? That was beautiful. It's very nice.
Anyway, so there's now Holy Trinity. This one is from the 15th century. There's only one monk in there. It has the worst access out of all of them because there's this cobblestone path that you have to take to get to the base of the rock. And then you see they broke the rock and they cut the stairs in. It's the only monastery where they did that. So it takes like 20 minutes to get there. Before they added the stairs, it was so much worse. It actually took 3 generations of monks, 75 years just for the church, because the ladders, remember, you'd climb down, grab the next ladder, keep on climbing, right? Here, up first. So the Nazis completely destroyed it. They even used the rock as target practice. And then the resistance fighters would go hide in other abandoned monasteries. So all the buildings that survived the decline, the Nazis bombed. So it's a new building, not much to see in there, but you get this view of Kalabaka. We're 340 meters above the town. There are easier ways to go take pictures of Kalabaka, though, to be honest. And there's, so, I remember, there is that one guy. So this one takes 50 minutes. We give people, we never go there because it's so difficult. When we do, we give people at least 50 minutes. Except there was this one Korean guy who is a legend because he did the whole thing in 15 minutes. He didn't speak English, so the tour leader said 50, but he heard 15. So he came back and he was dying, he couldn't breathe, he was sweating. He thought, oh, you couldn't make it, I'm so sorry, there was a misunderstanding. And he had pictures. He went up, saw the whole thing, took pictures, came back in 15 minutes. So yeah, he's a legend. Now there's that pointy rock over there, that's the tallest rock in Meteora, once again. 750 meters we said above sea level, or 2,500 feet almost. I think it's 2,460 to be exact. And we're gonna head for St. Stephen. Okay, there's this bus in front of you. Anyway, behind the bus there's the Valley of Thessalia, which you'll see from the balcony of St. Stephen. So you're gonna get some pictures there. St. Stephen is the monastery, the first one that became a convent. We're gonna talk about how women got here once you're out of the monastery though. It's from the 14th century. It's the second oldest one of the surviving monasteries, but there was a small semi-organized monastery here like the 12th century already. It's old. And it's, unfortunately, the Nazis bombed it. And the only surviving building that you can visit of the original structure is the museum, which used to be the Rat Factory. So that's from the 14th century. There's a fresco of the Virgin in there too, which is the oldest one you can see on the rocks. The church you're going to visit is newer. It's from the 18th century, because that's when a very rich family, or maybe a very sinful family, donated the very important